I hope you can see my screen. I'm Prachi, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Well, I can see a few people are trying to log in, so we'll give them a few seconds to set themselves up. And I hope you're well and keeping safe. So today's session is about Airbyte with DB3. Airbyte was developed to address the problem of moving data from applications, databases, and APIs to data warehouses and data lakes. So it is an open source data pipeline platform that performs data integration. It syncs data from different applications, APIs, and databases into data warehouses and data lakes. And since the existing ETL platforms are becoming difficult to maintain, an increasing number of companies are now turning to Airbyte. DBT, which is short for Data Build Tool, helps data analytics engineers transform data in their warehouses by simply writing select statements. Now, DBT turns these select statements into tables and views. Now, before we start our session, for those that are joining us for the first time, WalkingTree is a technology-focused company with a core focus on designing and building cross-platform web and mobile applications. We perform system integrations and enable digital transformation. We also specialize in data integration, data analytics, migration from legacy to modern systems, cloud migrations, and of course, we do perform UX design. Now, apart from end-to-end application development, we also provide custom solutions to enterprises for web and mobile, very specific services within the software development lifecycle, UI UX design, microservices, DevOps, and cloud. We have a very flexible staff augmentation service that provides clients with on-demand skills and resources that helps them meet organizational and business objectives. Well, now that you know about WalkingTree, let us move on to introducing our speakers. We have Abhilasha Sinha, who has a total experience of 18 years, and her core strength lies in designing and building complex cross-platform applications using Angular, React, and Flutter. She has also been working with our clients to harness the power of data analytics to exceed their business goals. Shubham Bharadwaj has been with us for the past 4 years. His core strength lies in DevOps, analytics, AI, and machine learning. He has helped clients transform their businesses using data analytics and has helped them embrace innovation at a competitive pace. Now that you know a little about us and our speakers, please do note that we will be fielding your questions at the end of our discussion. And please leave your questions in the Q&A box only. And now that we do have people logged in, we can start with our main agenda. Abhilasha?
Thank you, Prachi. Hope my screen is visible. So starting with today's webinar. So the agenda for today's webinar, we would talk about data integration and its importance. And then we would look at the two main tools we are going to talk about and see them in action, Airbyte and DBT. How we would go about using Airbyte and defining transformations using DBT. And finally, Shubham will be taking us through a demo of the tool and show us how easily we can use Airbyte and also define transformations in DBT. So to start with, like any enterprise is ending up using multiple systems, multiple applications because of the way the things are. So there are different ERP systems, CRM systems. Then you may have your in-house HRMS system. So data scattered all over. Now, data integration is important because we want to bring all that data to one place, have a single source of truth for the data to be able to make sense of the data. So that is where data integration becomes a very important aspect of data analytics. Uh, and it is the, you can say it is the start of the journey of data towards value. So everything starts with this integration phase where we are collating the data, we are bringing the data, we are enabling the data collaboration across different applications. So it could be databases, like different data warehouses. So like trying to build and bring in data and build these data warehouses, so that then you can take it to the next step wherein you can build your visualization dashboards or you can do your predictive analytics. So that's what we mean when we say it will help in making smarter business decisions and better data integrity, as in because you have a complete visibility of the data and nothing is hidden from you. So even if like if your systems are so diverse that you have something running on premise and something on AWS cloud, because now it's also scattered, you could decide to use a GCP and AWS for different arrangement or different scenarios. So bringing all that and maintaining that integrity, that's where this story begins. So now where does Airbyte fit into in that data story? So Airbyte is an open source data integration tool for the modern data teams. Why modern? Because of its entire look and feel and its capability of ease of use and customization, as well as the way it is structured. So it is containerized. That is like one of the main USPs of Airbyte. So it enables you to build that end-to-end data pipeline um, from your source system to your destination and flow your data seamlessly. So you can also, it scales to a good amount. It is capable of handling huge volumes of data. And the pricing structure of Airbyte is also very user-friendly and predictable, wherein it is not like directly volume-based. It has its own like a way of defining where it is infrastructure-based pricing. So when you're using an API, the kind of measurement is different versus when you're using a database, because the way the processing takes place in these two scenarios is a bit different. So it is all based on the actual compute capacity or compute time which is getting used. And that's how it is very like uh, uh, cheap also, like relatively less expensive is the how we can say. So moving on, if we have to like talk about the main points, what highlights of Airbyte. So firstly, it provides this connector development kit, the CDK, which actually makes the connector building process very seamless and fast. So of course, it has a huge list of connectors which comes with the tool itself. So there are some 165 connector which it talks about in the Airbyte website, and it with this CDK it gives you the capability to extend and define your own connectors. So if you have some new systems where you don't have a connector, so it could be some legacy systems where you can fetch the data using APIs. So, or even like the modern systems where maybe the connector is not available yet. So you can go ahead and build your own connector using the CDK, and you can as well publish it to the community so that others can use it. Also the GUI, you will see when Shubham will do the demo. So it is quite easy to use and very hands-on for a less technical person also, like a less tech savvy person can also seamlessly use it, and the learning curve is quite shallow. Also, as I mentioned, like the containerization aspect. So the connectors run as Docker images. So each of these images can be like run in different systems based on how you want to maintain or handle your infrastructure. So be it an AWS Fargate or a Kubernetes, you can set up your Docker and then you can have it very containerized in the way it is executed, and as well the scaling can be taken care accordingly. Also, so it focuses on overall portability, accuracy, and security of the data. So the platform takes care of that. And yeah, the main thing which uh, we need to mention here is that it comes with a cloud version as well as the open source, like the uh, available version, which you can deploy locally on your on-premise and use it, or you can use the cloud version, and that's where the pricing comes in. So if you decide to use your own infrastructure, you can as well deploy it and use it, and then there'll be no pricing involved there because it is open source there. So also, even if you're using the cloud version, so there is no risk of vendor lock-in, and your data is in your own cloud. So you can actually have full control of your data. Also, as part of the flow, when your data is getting transformed from your source to your destination, so for most of the cases, you will see that Airbyte handles it very automatically, the normalization process of the data model, wherein if suppose your destination is a database like a Postgres or a data warehouse like a Redshift, so automatically Redshift has the Airbyte has the capability to normalize and convert your JSON data into the table format. So that is provided by the platform. Also, like when we speak about scaling, so the way the Airbyte is structured, that it provides these workers. So the workers run concurrently, and that's where scaling is very natural, or it is seamless. So the workers get added and they run concurrently to handle as the load increases or the number of connectors running increases. And as we spoke about the less expensive solution, so yeah, that is another very unique point here. And another good point is that it will not charge you for the failed transactions. So Airbyte believes in giving you value, and that's where it doesn't charge if a transaction fails. Now, if we talk about the possible use cases, so Airbyte, wherever there is a requirement where you want to bring in data and like move it to your data warehouse or database. So it could be like if you want to forecast your e-commerce application metrics, where you have data coming in from different systems. So maybe you're using your Facebook for advertising, or you're using MailChimp for sending your your mailers, your promotion mailers, your so all that, how you're getting the response on each of these. So all that data can be consolidated, and these source systems can be brought into your Redshift through source connectors, and then you can move it to your single destination, wherein you can get your all your data there, and then you can do your visualization to see how your metrics are. Similarly, like if you want to see how your Zoom is being used, how much your teams are using Zoom, how much time they are spending in meetings. So you have connectors available for Zoom, for Microsoft Teams. So all that could be a valid use case. Then when you use DBT for transformations, so again, like if you want to make changes to the data while you're loading, so there DBT will add value, and that is the T of the ELT process. So like the traditional ETL is now changed to ELT, where you extract and load, and then you transform the data as per your needs. So yeah, as we spoke about the marketing, Facebook ads, bringing that to your cloud data warehouse, and then using BI tools to visualize your data and give your reports to your leadership. So all these use cases are very much valid in the context of different enterprises where your data can bring more value when you bring it to your single source. So that's where Airbyte will be useful. And as we get into detailing about the Airbyte capability and seeing how it works, so just to introduce the concepts of Airbyte, if you're starting off with Airbyte, so I'll just give a quick introduction. So source is from where you're getting the data. Destination is where you would be moving your data to. So that is like self-explanatory. Connector is the connector is defined for your source as well as your destination. So that is what will work between Airbyte and your the application, be it a source or a destination, be it a data warehouse or a database. And connection is what the full stream. So starting from source to destination, and there could be multiple sources moving to destination. So that is the data pipeline which we are talking about. Stream is a collection of records. So stream is what you will get as the response of an API or as a output from your table. So a collection of records is what a stream is, and that is what will actually flow between your source to your destination. And a field is obviously like a data element of your stream. So a field of your table. Namespace is more like a collection of streams. So it could actually correspond to, if you think from an RDBMS perspective, so a schema where you have a related group of tables into your schema. So same way here, you can have a related group of streams which will come under a namespace. The connection sync modes. So this is like how you want to define your synchronization frequency. What frequency would be the movement from source to destination? That is where the sync mode will be used. So it could be like every 24 hours or every weekly once, depending on the need, you could set that. The normalization process is the process of transforming your data from the source format to a format which is suitable for your consumption in the destination. So if it is if it's an S3 bucket where you're pushing your data, it could be a Parquet file or a CSV file. But if your destination is a RDBMS table, a database or a data warehouse, so obviously you would want your JSON, which is coming from your API, to fit into your table. It should map to your table in the destination, and that is what your basic normalization would do. And this would apply for obviously wherever there is a need for normalization in the destination. And workspace is more of a term of collaboration, wherein you can have a collection of sources, destinations, connections, all within a group of users who can collaborate and work with the with a single billing account for the Airbyte cloud. So this is for cloud, where you can collaborate and share your data. So this is an image which just gives you a view of some of the popular sources here. So you can see a Facebook, a Salesforce, Elephant SQL is for your Postgres, MySQL, and others here. And similarly, the destinations could be your Snowflake, a very popular data warehouse, or you Redshift, S3, another Postgres. So it could be a variety of sources and destinations which Airbyte covers. And it has a very active community which is actively working. So the Airbyte themselves are working on many of the connectors, and the community also contributes to the connector development. Now, as we talk about Airbyte, which is doing this extract and load, wherein your data is moving from your source to destination. But obviously, you would need some cleanup in your data or some change of format, some aggregation, some transformation in these different formats. So that is where the DBT tool becomes important in this whole ecosystem. And why DBT? is because Airbyte internally uses DBT, and that's how if we have to add a transformation, we would also extend the same DBT and try to apply our transformations after the data is loaded into the destination. So that's why it is an ELT, which we are talking about. Now, so DBT, which stands for Data Build Tool. So it's an independent tool, and it is actually used mainly for transformation only. So it can be independently used. So it's not like DBT has to be linked with Airbyte. So it can be independently used for transformations, and it is quite a powerful tool because it converts or compiles the code into a raw SQL, and so it has a complete hold of your database and how you can modify your data in your database. So it has two components, a compiler and a runner, wherein when you write the code, so it will compile it into the raw SQL, and then it will execute the code against whatever. So you will have to run the code against something, right? Because you're trying to transform the data on a data warehouse or a database. So that would be your base on which your DBT transformation will apply. So when you're actually taking your compilers also, so you will have to build a data warehouse specific runner. So that could be like a DBT Snowflake or a DBT Redshift, something like that. So, and internally it is made up of Jinja. So Jinja is like a custom component which actually extends the functionality of DBT, and it allows you to write even more complex transformations and give you control over the base warehouse or database on which you're trying to apply this. So that's what makes DBT very powerful, and that's why I think Airbyte team has used DBT as a choice for their movement and transformation. So if you, this is how DBT works. So basically, before the transformation, the loading comes in where you will extract from your different sources, load it. Now, obviously, you have not done anything with the data. So it is in the raw format, like whatever you got from your source systems. So now, obviously, you cannot directly consume it in this format. And that's where DBT comes into picture. It does the transformation and it makes it in the format in which it can be consumed through your BI tools or any other systems which would want to consume this data. So that is how this pipeline is flows or handles the data as a ELT and makes the data useful for consumption. So if we have to talk about how DBT fits in this Airbyte infrastructure, you can say. So as I mentioned, so internally Airbyte uses DBT, and when you would see in the demo when Shubham will run your connection or sync your connection, so it generates a log, and that is where you would see that it generates this into a workspace, and it gives a workspace ID. That is how you identify, or you would be able to locate your DBT file. So it is basically a SQL file only, because that's how the compiler will generate, the DBT compiler. So you will get the SQL file. Now that is the file which even if you don't do any transformation, it will be generated. But now that you want to include the transformation in your pipeline, so you would take that file and then you would change, or you would implement or modify it to include your transformations in that file. Then you would, so at that point, actually it is a SQL, right? So you can as well, if you don't want to automate it, like you can manually run that SQL on the destination and it will effectively perform your transformation. Or you can run that DBT file in your DBT compiler and that would also perform the transformation, because effectively that is what it would do. Like it will run the SQL and then it will perform the transformation on your data warehouse. Or you could configure this in your Airbyte itself, and that is what is the piece which will actually automate the transformation as part of your pipeline. So when you're when you're scheduling this, so obviously you would not want to do it manually. You would want to configure it, and that is where you would configure your DBT project for this workspace ID, which you got from your logs in your Airbyte. You would make the changes, and obviously for Airbyte to be able to identify or pick the DBT file, right? So you would, so the process is like you would commit it into a Git repository from where it will, so you would point that in your transformation, like when you're defining your transformation, and that would pick the Git repo, it will compile and it will, so it will load the data into your destination, then it will apply your transformation, and then your data is ready to use and take it forward. So that is how the data pipeline falls in place in this combination of Airbyte and DBT, journey of the data. Now, I will hand it over to Shubham, who will actually show you how this all works in Airbyte and how we can use DBT, and then you can appreciate more the ease of use and the seamlessness of the process. So over to you, Shubham.
You're on mute, Shubham.
No, I'm just starting. Sure. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So now I start a demo of Airbyte. As Avlasha was mentioning, Airbyte is used to do ELT, extract, load, and transform. ELT is a very important requirement for a large number of cases where you are not so much interested in transforming the data as soon as you get it from the source, but are more interested in having it available into your system, and whereby you can do transformation later as you deem fit. So Airbyte is one of the most prominent tools in the world today, which is used for doing ELT. And as Vilas mentioned, for any ELT process, ETL or ELT for that matter, you got to have a source, a destination, and a transformation. So I'll start with them one by one. I'll talk about the sources which are present. I'll show the sources. Abhilasha referred to them earlier. I'll show them to you. And then I'll show you how to do a transformation, how to build a transformation using DBT. So let me start with connections in Airbyte. To be able to do a connection, what is a connection? A connection is a combination of a source and a destination. And of course, it has to be facilitated by a transformation in between for it to really make sense. On one side, you have the source. Source can be of various types. It can be a database. It can be a warehouse, data warehouse. It could be an analytics service. It could be a CRM. It could be an application. It could be a collaboration tool. It could be a data lake. It could be a data stream. It could be an app store. Let's see what different sources are available in Airbyte. As you see here on screen, I have specified one source, which is day-to-day rates. So as I'll walk you through the demo, what we'll see is an application or is a use case whereby we try to do financial statement reconciliation using exchange rates API. But let me first talk about how to add sources in general and the different kinds of sources which are available in Airbyte. To be able to add a new source, you provide a source name. It could be my source. And then you choose from here. Now, as you would see here, this provides you a vast variety of sources, starting from Airtables. They are alphabetically ordered. So Airtable, Amazon ADS, ads, Amazon Seller Partner, Amazon SQS, Amplitude, and so on. Let me talk about the categories of these sources and show how powerful this source set is. On one hand, you have databases. So if you look at, well, say if you go to MySQL, right, you would see So you have MongoDB here, you have Microsoft SQL Server, you will have going down, you will see Postgres, Oracle DB is there, Postgres is there. And similarly, you have other databases. You have Apache Kafka, you have Oracle DB, as I mentioned, you have ClickHouse, you have Cockroach DB. So deep databases just from one kind of sources from where you extract data in all the major databases. As I mentioned, SQL, Postgres, MySQL, Postgres, PostgreSQL, I mean, Apache Kafka, MongoDB, Oracle DB, ClickShow, Cockroach DB, they are available. Also, side by side, you have data warehouses like Redshift, BigQuery, and Snowflake. So what I show in this example is a use case of Snowflake. Besides that, you have analytics services, analytics tools like Google Analytics, like Amplitude, like Looker, like Microsoft Dynamics NAV. You also have collaboration tools, which include your Airtable. So Airtable was what we started with, which includes GitHub, GitLab, Microsoft Teams, Notion, Slack, Smartsheet, Zoom. So it's a very powerful capability. If you compare across the different tools which are available in market, so I'll just scroll through it just to give you a feel of it. So, and maybe just refer to the prominent ones, right? So you see Airtable, for example, you see App Store. So App Store, well, it's a storehouse of a large number of apps available online, and you will be able to connect to those apps, rather load the data associated with those apps, at least the publicly available information, which you would be able to connect to once you have the required authentication available with you. So you can get through streaming sources. You can use Azure table storage or BigQuery, data warehouse like BigQuery, or could use Cockroach DB, or could use Confluence. I was talking about tools, other tools, which include Confluence, include Jira, and you could fetch data from API. For example, I have the exchange rates API. I'll be using exchange rates API for this. So the exchange rates API gives you the exchange rates for a particular currency with respect to other currencies on time interval which you desire, day-to-day basis, hour-to-hour basis, month-to-month basis on an average, right? You can have a Facebook marketing as a source, or Facebook pages as a source, and could either have a CRM like Freshdesk or Freshservice, Freshsales. You could use a collaboration service like a tool like GitHub or GitLab. Could use advertising service like GitAds, analytics service like Google Analytics, and obviously normal files like Google Sheets. So normal files. So simple databases, CSV, Excel, Google Sheets, for example, here, they are always there. But then the interesting, or rather the more important feature is it allows you to integrate with a large number of other tools. For example, I talked about Jira, Confluence, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and so on. So that is one thing which you can do. You can integrate with Instagram, with Jenkins, with Jira, with Kafka, and with LinkedIn Ads, with Looker, Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft Teams, with Monday, MongoDB, and so on. So there's a huge variety of tools which is available. And let me mention, the beauty is that you don't have to do anything except in providing your credentials. So if you're connecting to Snowflake or to Postgres or to Redshift, you of course will provide your credentials, but then you don't have to do anything else. Now, and the next, the second most important thing in this context is, and that will actually touch more in our next webinar, is that this allows you to also create custom connectors. So what you see here are connectors which are already available with Airbyte. And Airbyte mentions that you can create any connector in the world. And when they say any, they mean any connector in the world within 2 hours. So there's a very fast pace of development. So Airbyte has that kind of facility whereby it allows you to create connectors fast. If you have a requirement where you want to have a custom connector for any other kind of source, you can build it very fast, and we'll discuss that in greater detail in our next webinar. So much for sources. Now coming to destinations. Destinations are a bit different. For example, you have DynamoDB in the destination, but you may not have it in the source. You don't have it in the source. And similarly, there are differences. So if you see, of course, warehouses like BigQuery, Redshift will be there in destination. You'll have Amazon SQL Service, Blob Storage, Cassandra, DynamoDB, Google Cloud Storage, Google Firestore, PubSub, Kinesis, Local SV, CSV, JSON, and so on. So not everything which is available as a source is available as a destination, or vice versa. But then, as far as ETL is concerned, so where do you generally load your data? You load it in warehouses, right? Warehouses is the most, they're the most sought after option for loading. So, well, you may load it into your sheets as well. Nobody prevents you from doing it. But at the end of the day, even though sheets need to be, the data needs to be stored somewhere most of the times. But as far as basic databases are concerned, be it Postgres, be it Oracle as you see on screen, or be it the warehouses like Redshift, BigQuery, or well, your storage buckets. So I just referred to Google Cloud Storage, right? GCS. So you may have files, you may not want to store them in Redshift. You may just want, you have a large number of files, you may just want to store them in Google Cloud Storage. Yeah, but it gives you that functionality. And to suppose you want to connect to DynamoDB, well, you provide your key ID and region and so on, and point for every connector, you'll have a separate specification, a separate configuration, which you'll be required to provide depending on the connector. So this way you can provide your sources and destinations, and then you can essentially do a connection, add a connection. So when you add a connection, you specify your source from the list of sources that you've chosen, and then you specify your destination. So while creating a source, well, you can choose an existing source. So in this case, I have an existing source which is based on exchange rates API. This is what I call the day-to-day rates, and I could use the same source for another requirement, or you can well choose a source from the base sources which are available, as I just showed to you. Similarly, you create a destination, and well, hold on. So here is connections. You want to create a destination, you may create a destination. Let me just take this as a source for a time being. I'll use this existing source, and then I'll create a destination. I can again use this, or I can choose any other destination. I'll just provide a name, my destination, and then select a connector of my choice, whatever I want. It will show up, and then I'll create the connection. Suppose I want it to be, say, BigQuery. Then I got to provide credentials. So in this case, I'll not be showing that, illustrating that in its entirety. But then once you do that, you will be able to set up the connection where you will be able to link. Now, of course, the $64,000 question is, how are you going to do transform? Because nobody wants to use an ETL or ETL tool just for loading from source to destination. Why not use from source itself, right? You got to do some transformation. That's the whole point of doing data integration. So the idea is that, or rather the main reason why people would do data integration is because in today's scenario, for the kind of applications people design, they get data from a vast variety of sources. So in a single SaaS tool, right, you may have data coming from some API. So you may be working on a marketing platform where you would have data from different APIs coming from YouTube, Instagram, from TikTok, and other platforms, other social media applications. Simultaneously, you might also require data from or pertaining to populations spread across the world, right? So you might go to World Bank or other websites, or depending on your use case, right? You might want some specific data of, for example, in this case, I want data of exchange rates, right? So you may want the market data. So the point is, your data could come from various kinds of sources. It could be from applications, it could be from CRM tools, custom resource management tools, it could be from your collaboration tools, it could be from your apps, for example. So there's a vast a multitude of sources, vast multitude of types of sources for that matter also. And you got to take them, and conventionally, what would people do? If you go, certainly if you go say 8 years below, as in earlier, right? Say in 2014, around 2014, that was the time, and certainly earlier than that, of course, when if you want to have a transformation, if you want to design a system using, you want to do ETL, if you want to design an application using lots of different data sources, which application which draws data from different data sources. So what you would do, you wouldn't have a single data integration tool for it, right? Now, for some use case, you may use Informatica. For some use case, you may use, again, you would choose whether you want open source or enterprise, right? So you might go for Informatica, you might not go for it. You might go for, say, Penta Hotel, and you might not go for it for certain other reasons, right? And of course, a good number of them are enterprise tools. But this allows you or Airbyte allows you to, or since it's open source as well, it allows you to take the code and make changes as I'll show, and then customizes as much as you want and deploy it, right? So isn't it a great feature that you have access to different kinds of databases, data warehouses, applications, collaboration tools, and so on under one single roof? And well, it's easy not to appreciate it when you just have one transformation to do, right? But when you are having a lot of transforms, when you build a real SaaS tool, SaaS platform, or any other platform for that matter, right? Well, even if you're doing AI as a service, right? There are cases where you have to do data integration. When you do those kinds of things, you realize that you have a large number of transformations, and with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 transformations, it's easy to ensure that they remain in sync. But the moment you go beyond that number, and I would put that number around 10 to 15 from a psychological perspective, because once you go beyond that number, it really becomes bulky, and you need to ensure that you would really go for a single platform which manages all that for you, rather than going for different ETL tools, each of which does its a particular job best. You would rather go for a single data integration tool. Now, let me move to transformation, because transformation is the main ball game here. So you have a connection and you want to do a transformation. Now let me open this connection. This is the exchange rates API. So what are we doing here? This implementation of this API is for doing financial statement reconciliation. So as you see, what I named the DB, the Snowflake. So in this case, I'm using Snowflake. Snowflake is just one kind of data warehouse, which is available for storing your records, and it has its own advantages. It's low cost. It allows you to remove data silos. It provides great actionable insights and so on. So, well, this is just for the purpose of this demo. Depending on your use case, you would go for Redshift and so on. Depends on the kind of platform you're building. Of course, there are a lot of other factors to consider it. But in this case, you've used Snowflake, and the API, the source is actually the exchange rates API, as I was mentioning. So if I may just show the use of transformation, if I start with it, let me come to how we do the transformation. So I already showed you the source, which was referred to as the day-to-day rates, which comes from exchange rates API. Now the destination was a Snowflake. And if you have to do transform, how do we do? So Vilasha mentioned that you do it using DBT. And well, Airbyte internally, even with with the already available connectors, when it does transforms, whatever does transformations, it does that using DBT. Now, when you make customized transforms, of course, you have to do it using DBT. And it's not that only Airbyte uses it. There are other tools also which use DBT. But then at the end of the day, what you look for is an integrated package, end-to-end package, which does everything. Well, if you look at its entirety, right, it should be a really good package. It may not be as efficient with respect to some ETL tool in one aspect, but then if you go about it in totality, look at it comprehensively, then it actually stands out. Let me show you how transformations are done. How do we do transformations using DBT? So this is again for the financial reconciliation use case. What you see on screen is I'm first checking the version of DBT installed. So now if you want to install DBT, you have a standard pip install command. Now DBT has several plugins depending on the kind of transformation you're interested in doing, depending on the destination also which you have. So for example, what you see here, the DBT version is 1.1.0, and it is the latest version. So we are up to date. We of course remain up to date. And the plugin which is used in this case for the purpose of this demo is the Snowflake plugin, because after all, my destination is Snowflake. But then you could have other plugins. You could have for MySQL, you could have for Redshift, you could have for Oracle, you could have for BigQuery and so on. So all those are available. How do you install them? How do you install DBT? It's a simple command. So you go there and you do pip install, a normal pip install. Sorry. So if you want to install Snowflake, Snowflake is already installed here. So if you wanted to, suppose it was not installed and you wanted to install it, so you would just do DBT Snowflake, and then it enters. So it would install Snowflake. As it is already there, I'm not doing it again. Now, if you want to do a transformation, where do you start? To start with, you would remember that you already have a source and a destination, right? Now, naturally, to be able to do transform, you need to connect to those sites. You need to connect to your destination as well as your source. At the end of the day, you would load your data. Whatever data is coming from source, you would load it in your database or data warehouse in your destination. So how do we go about it? The command to do that is dbt init. You initialize a project, and well, for this case, let me just call it sample use case. So this is a project. with name sample use case, and this dash is not allowed, so I should rather use underscore. Or, well, I'm not even needed, but it's to be noted that not every character is allowed in the name. So I'm doing dbt init sample use case. What this is going to do, this is going to initialize, or rather kind of provide me a set of files and folders which will have custom code, sorry, built-in code, which is used to generate the transformation, but then you'll have certain custom files also created based on your connection, which will allow you to do the transform and rather customize it. So I do this, and then what happens, it will ask me for certain inputs. So one of them is which database do I want to use. In this case, because I only installed the dbt snowflake connector, so I would go for snowflake. In case I had more, I would go for more. So this is just for the purpose of demonstration. You can install multiple versions and then as in multiple connectors and use the corresponding connector. It asks you for the account. Now in this case it's a snowflake account, so I'm already connected to the account. So in this case I'll just mention a because the idea is to do a demo, right? It's not doing it end to end right now. I just need to demonstrate as to how the process is done. So here you would not enter the entire URL for that matter. You would just enter what comes here before snowflakecomputing.com, right? So suppose it is ABC, and then you have a username. So let it be user. You have a authentication type. You could either use a password or a key pair or SSO single sign-on. So in this case, let me choose password. Well, you enter the password. I am entering some password. You mention the role with which you want to create this transformation. At the end of the day, any data integration tool would ensure, because it got to connect to a data source at the end of the day, right? As in on the other side. So you have to have specific roles for using which you can do specific things. So in this case, let me have an admin role. I'll just mention it as a test thing. And warehouse name, what is the warehouse at mind? So well, let me call it simply EDW Enterprise Data Warehouse. What's the database name? Let me call it DB. You could use any name. I mean, you would use the name of your, which is actually a database, of course. What schema? So depending on what kind of system it is, right? So it's a Snowflake. So you would have, it has a schema. You got to provide the schema. So generally people would go for public schema. Otherwise they can always go for the schemas depending on their use case. Now, depending on the kind of amount of data you have and other factors, whether you want one thread for Airbyte when it launches a transformation, right? A transformation step. Internally, what kind of processing, what level of processing is required? What are the kind of, what is, depending on the load that you want, what number of threads do you want to start? In this case, let me just give one. And it says happy modeling. Now you get started. Now, what is this model? This is not an ML model. Certainly, of course, we are doing data integration. At the end of the day, because I work in AI/ML domain as well, AI/ML is dependent on data, and data pre-processing forms the first part of AI/ML, right? It's the first part of your entire pipeline. And that in data pre-processing, you obviously get to do a lot of ETL. We don't call it ETL, we call it data pre-processing. We may call it with the catchy terms, but then at the end of the day, a good part of it is done using ETL, whether you do it using pandas or some other library or some other tool, but it is to some extent ETL. I mean, that's used there. So that's how anything which I tell at the end of the day, it adds value. When you have good AI/ML is dependent on data. If you have good data, you do good things. Now, what you see here is I built a project here, and the project is called sample use case. So let me go there in sample use case. Now, remember that I didn't really provide valid credentials. This is just a test use case. So you do have certain files created, a dbt project YAML file, the configuration file, and a models folder in which you will have some sample files. Now those sample files are here. In this case, you have an example file, but if in case you are providing a real credential, right? For example, you have Snowflake there. So if you were to provide it, you would really have valid files created. For example, let me go to the existing one. So this was just for the purpose of demo, but I'll go to the exchange transactions one. Exchange rates info. The idea is to do payment or daily settlement reconciliation, daily settlement. So I would go to models because that is where our actual files are. And as I was trying to mention initially, this models is not an ML model, it's a data model because we're in the field of data here. So what you see here is an exchange rates.sql and exchange rates.sql. So these files automatically get created once you have your source and destination chosen. We chose the API and the destination as Snowflake, and once we use their destination and try to and we launch DBT. Of course, if you don't launch DBT, any of it is not going to get created. Now, how to go about it? To start with, it loaded data from your source into your destination. Nothing fancy, right? So this file that you see, exchange rates.sql, it just has what a normal transform would look like. So just assume if you had exchange rates API on one side, and if you had this Snowflake on other side, or any combination of source and data destinations, what kind of query would you write to do the transformation? It would change depending on your destination and source, of course. So in this case, here is a SQL which does that transformation from the exchange rates API to your Snowflake, and I'm just opening it to show you that what exactly it does. So as it mentions, it is a SQL model to build a hash column based on the values of this record, and it is based on exchange rates. So what you see here is they are selecting some values, selecting base, date, rates, and then there are of course Airbyte related information which is getting loaded into the destination. Now the deal here is that it is a normal replication of source into destination, but if at all you have to do transformation, then you can change this. So suppose you have the date column here, right? Select base date. Now you may want, now your dates may be in a specific format as they are displayed, but then if you want to change the format, you may try to go with some other dates. So I was just trying to show, which I'll come to shortly, but let me see whether that is accessible here directly. I'll show the GitHub code just now. Sure. So here is my entire connection, right? Which is taking data from Exchange Rates API, loading data into Snowflake. And this is the frequency of sync is 24 hours because it is meant to be a well based on exchange rates. And we are doing a daily transaction, daily settlement in a way based on exchange rates. So it's a daily settlement. So we would do it on a daily, we would do the sync up daily. Now you take this, suppose you want to change the date format, you change that, or you make any kind of change you want. So it is SQL, right? But then the power of it is, while you will have to do it from your end, but the beauty is, the power is, the strength is that you can do any kind of change that you want, right? And it is customized to your requirement. Now, but then the basic file, right? You don't really have to bother about the source and the destination because you already set it up. You only have to bother what kind of transform you want to do. For example, if you were to connect those sources from pandas, source and destination are as what they stand in, but then the basic code, the transform code is what you would write. So your focus is just limited to that. Now, once you make changes here, what you do is you commit it. Now, in this case, this is the repository in which my code is lying. This particular code is lying. So when you define a transformation, you take this repository and specify that. I'll show that to you. But to start with, I'll just show that you have these models, which I'm anyway showing you from the terminal. And these models, these .sql files essentially will be doing a transformation. And you will take this GitHub link and you will paste it into your transformations. Let me go there. So this is what you have. This I have anyway mentioned that you do syncing every 24 hours because this is payment reconciliation or settlement. The replication, the sync is every 24 hours. This is where the transformation comes. And as Abhilasha was mentioning, this gives you the facility, or rather makes it easy for you to do a normalization of tabular data. So you're doing a transformation, right? So internally it has to ensure efficiency, and when you do normalization, it is better depending on your use case as well, but then normalization is generally a good idea. If you want to make a transformation, what do you do? So you want to add a transformation, you give any name for the transformation that you want. You because it is a custom transformation in this case, of course, right? You are this doesn't do transformation for you. You have to do it from your end. So in this case, I can use custom DBT. Now, at the end of the day, as Abhilasha mentioned, this is a tool which is supported on Kubernetes, on Fargate. So your containerization platforms, your orchestration platforms allow you to run data integration using Airbyte. So Airbyte is one of the few tools which allow for containerization, which can be containerized. But then when you do containerization, you got to have an image in which you will run your code. So here what you see is 0.19.1, the DBT version, but then the latest is 1.1.0. You can use it. Now there are different commands here. I'll just want to run a basic script. And where is that script? This is the path of the script. This is the repo, as I was showing a couple of maybe a minute ago, a couple of minutes ago. And then depending on the branch where my code is committed, I can just specify and then I can see my transformation. So in this case, what I was showing was that we already had a transformation, which was kind of where we were connecting from Exchange API and loading data into Snowflake, and this transformation was syncing. We set the sync frequency as 24, but we can sync it now as well, or we can set a manual syncing thing. So this is what it does, how you set transformations. Let me kind of summarize it. So you have a vast variety of data sources and data destinations. That's the most important feature, the most significant feature, the unique selling point of Airbyte. Well, not the unique selling point, one of the, unique selling is unique selling, right? Okay, so this is one of the selling points of Airbyte. So you have a vast multitude of connections available, both from destination and source standpoint. The best feature of Airbyte, which really makes it stand out from other data integration tools, is it allows you to build custom connectors. We already showed a large number of data sources, but then there are many more possible in the world, and you can create a custom connector in less than 2 hours. And we'll show you in our next webinar how you do that. And then the best part of it is open source. You take the code, download the code, make changes, run it on your local. You can run it on cloud as well. I mean, you can do it on cloud, as Abhilasha was mentioning, and it solves things for you. Now, let me just very quickly kind of encapsulate as to in which kind of scenarios you would like to go for a DBT. So, of course, historically, there have been a large number of data integration tools. You have Informatica, Talent, you have Pentaho. I'm sure you have a large number of other tools available. These are the ones which we generally use at WalkingTree as well. But they have been there in the market for a long time. But then some of these tools may have relatively less number of data sources. Some of them are enterprise. So you always have those disadvantages. But if you are really looking for a cost-effective solution, as Abhilasha was mentioning, it's cost-effective. Even if your transformation fails, it doesn't charge you. If you want to use a cost-effective solution to perform ELT, and if you are really looking for open source, then you should really go for it. It's a good choice to make, right? You will have other parameters also to consider, but then more often than not, it's a good choice to make. And it's only recent, right? It was launched in 2020, and the number of customers it has been able to scale up to, and the amount of, the organization Airbyte, right, which launched Airbyte, is the kind of funding, and it has got, that's awesome. So there's real potential for it. If you're hoping to work with connectors that operate independently from each other and they are simple to use and easy to apply the updates, of course, that's a very, very important feature, and one of the most important features. If I were to call something as a unique selling point, if I were to talk about one point, then this would be the connector point. And of course, if you want to extract data from various sources in easy manner, right? Now, as far as ENT are concerned, right? Sorry, ENL are concerned, you don't really have to do anything, right? You have to check the source and check the destination. It's in the transform, but transform may look a bit not so user friendly, but at the end of the day, what we have to realize is it generates a custom file to start with, and you only need to make small changes in the code, right? Your work is related to making changes in SQL, etc. Rest of the so-called platform or the background is provided by it. So that's what. I'm sorry I took some 10 minutes extra. We have questions. I see 2 questions. Can the DBT code used? Let me answer these questions. So I'm starting here. Or Pranshu, would you like to take it forward?
Right. Are you able to see the questions?
I'm able to see the questions. So may I get started?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So the first question is, can the DBT code used by Airbyte partition and cluster BigQuery tables? You see, as I mentioned, the transformation aspect of it is can be customized as per your requirement. Now you saw a SQL, a .SQL file. There is nothing in the world which prevents you from actually doing partitioning there. Now the table, as you specify, you would have to create it in the destination when you of course you have BigQuery, you have credentials of BigQuery, and then you have tables in BigQuery, you take it up, right? But then you specify that in the destination. But then the script, the .SQL file, as I showed, and this question was asked at 9:33 p.m. So by that time, I had not still started transformations. But then if you went through that part, you would have realized that it's a custom script. You can change it the way you want. So anything which you should be able to do using normal SQL, you should be able to do there. Second is the limit on the volume of data received from the API source is the limit. I hope the question is there a limit on the volume of data received from the API source. Well, no API in the world allows you to pull unlimited data. So every API has got its limits. And so what Airbyte is doing, they are not changing any basic thing. If, for example, Instagram allows you to, Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or any other social media platform allows you to only extract so and so much in a given period of time, Airbyte cannot allow you more than that, of course. How does Airbyte with DBT work with Airflow? So, how does on one hand, you have Airflow. In Airflow, you can schedule your jobs and other stuff. So if you look at any kind of orchestration tool or any kind of collaboration tool, be it GitLab, be it GitHub, be it your, I mean, you could have Zoom, you could have Jenkins, you could have Confluence, all these tools which have a lot of data of a particular kind available. When you connect to them, you get an interface which shows you, which provides you access to that data. Now, when you connect with via Airflow, depending on your requirements, your use case rather. So if you have Airflow where you are running certain processes, you are doing orchestration for certain processes, you would have a look at what kind of processes are available, and then you will be able to manipulate it there. So what we can do is, if you are really looking forward to it, maybe in our next webinar, we can show it in live as well, when we connect to an Airflow data source and show you the process and take it to the destination. But it will be, I think it will really take some time before, if you do it started right now. Or we can actually reply to this later. Any other questions? So I would like to encourage questions. So you see people, as I mentioned, data integration is certainly not a new field. Data integration has been there certainly as long as your IT industry, since your IT industry, and it would have been there even earlier. I mean, in different forms, right? I mean, not necessarily IT, but then in the last few years, as your data sources have increased, your data sources increased phenomenally, your destinations increased phenomenally. As somebody was asking, would you be able to partition tables? No, in these days, we don't really bother about just taking data from source and pushing into destination, right? In any data integration project, in any project for that matter, you would have to really take care of, especially when you work with big data, you would have to take care of customized requirements like doing partitioning of tables. If you really want your entire application to run fast, right? Your response time is less. So those kinds of requirements are there. Now, if you were to use some other ETL tool, maybe if you were to use Pentaho or Informatica, of course, there are steps where you are able to do that thing. As in do partitioning and so on, but it varies from tool to tool and it doesn't do everything. Here you can do everything because the script is in your hands. And by the way, nobody actually prevents anybody from modifying the script as they want, right? So if you work with other tools which are like more GUI oriented in terms of transformation, you have a limited functionality. What you can do is you can really put together various steps. For example, in some of these ETL tools, you can put together various transformation steps and build a fancy logic. But then the customization capability there is limited, and then if you go that way, it really becomes bulky. So you have a transformation which a layman may not be able to appreciate. Well, you need to know SQL for writing SQL, but then at the end of the day, if you're working in this field, right, and you really want to do custom logic, you got to be able to understand and write it. The other question is, does Airbyte has transformation capability, or is it just a connector for multiple sources? So as I showed, Airbyte does what is known as ELT. It has extract and load capability. It has transformation capability, but that is facilitated using this DBT. So as a package, yes, of course, were it not for it, it wouldn't be there in the market. But does Airbyte, does it do transformation standalone? No, it uses DBT. It runs on top of DBT for the same. How DBT is different than Spark? Spark also used for transformation on huge data. Does DBT support processing on big data? Of course, DBT supports. So you can have Spark. So Spark can be a one of the source or destinations for you in this particular case, depending on your requirement, right? So you could load data there. So DBT allows you to do big processing. Processing on big data. Now we mentioned a large number of databases. I talked about CouchDB, MongoDB. You have, of course, Redshift, warehouses like Redshift and BigQuery and so on, right? Now, if you talk about big data, unless you go for, if you go for cloud platforms, in any way you have Redshift, on AWS, you have BigQuery and Google Cloud and so on. On Azure, you would have Azure Cloud Storage, as in blob storage, as they call it, I guess. So on GCP, you would have Google Cloud Storage, otherwise, other than BigQuery, and it's used for a different purpose, right? So why would you use Google Cloud Storage? You wouldn't use Google Cloud Storage to actually store small amounts of data, right? People generally go for it when they have data, for example, running in millions of files. That's used there, and of course for other reasons as well. Now, the short answer is yes. It does support processing on big data, and well, a tool which is launched in 2020, if it doesn't support that, then it wouldn't really make it to the market also. As in, it wouldn't scale that high as it did. So it does do that. Any other question? Sure. Well, I'll just wait. We'll just wait for 1 moment. Please ask questions fast. And I would encourage you to ask questions. And it will be really great if there is a question for which we have to go back and really give you the answer later. So the Airflow question, I've really left it for the time being because that is more of a short demo that we can always do next week. I'll make it a point to have it in our webinar next time. But then if you have any other question, feel free. So yes, so well, as far the question is there any managed service on cloud for DBT, or will have to install DBT? So in this case, I installed DBT, but then Airbyte by itself provides you that option of the cloud. So it provides you, so when it runs on cloud, it runs as a managed service. Now, Abhilasha, would you like to talk more about this?
So there is a cloud version of DBT which you can use, and you can like check your code. And anyways, you have to again commit it in your code repo. So, but then there is a cloud version of DBT. Yes.
Okay, so that's all we have for today. And thank you so much for attending. However, before we sign off for the day, I wanted to let all of you know that we are having an interesting lineup of webinars next month, which does include one on the practices of Scrum and Agile. I will be sending invites to you all. So until next time, thank you so much for joining us today.